Hey guys, welcome to the Nick Bahe YouTube page. You know what you need to do. You need to subscribe, you need to ring the bell, you need to like the page, you need to leave a comment. I appreciate you. All right, welcome back into the Nick Bahe podcast, and on tap for today's podcast, we are talking hoops. We're talking Creighton hoops. Professor Bahe here at your service, giving you a mid-season progress report for the Creighton Blue Jays, because it certainly has been an interesting, exciting, entertaining season for Creighton so far. They're 12 games in, they're 9-3 on the season, and they're about to turn their full attention to Big East play, which, you know, you could make a case that the Big East is the best conference in the country with how their non-conference has played out. I mean, you look at the league right now, I mean, Nova is Nova. Everybody's like, is Nova good? Yeah, they're good. Everybody calm down with that, okay? Xavier's for real. Providence is off to an awesome start. I like that team. UConn is some grown-ass men. They're fantastic. Marquette's way better than I thought they'd be. St. John's with Champaign and Posh. Alexander's going to be a nightmare to handle. Seton Hall's the real deal. I mean, this league is legit. So Creighton's going to have their work cut out for them in a major, major way. Now, the interesting thing before we get into into what I've seen from Creighton is kind of what's going to end up happening with all of a sudden, you know, COVID is really ramped back up and it's really hitting the Big East especially hard. You know, Creighton's had a game canceled. The Big East has had a bunch of games canceled. And at least the initial rules was there was going to be a forfeit. Whichever team couldn't play forfeit, and they were awarded a loss, and the team they were playing was awarded a win, and they were not going to reschedule the games. But I'm taping this on December 23rd. As it was announced today, the Big East Conference is revamping those rules. It's no longer a forfeit. It's just declared a no contest, and they're going to work to try to reschedule some of these games. I think they're trying to change a little bit of their COVID policies to if you have 7 available players and 1 available coach, you can play. And so we'll see what ends up happening. It's just, it's amazing how, you know, it feels like in some ways college basketball, and the Big East is in the middle of it, is kind of right back to where they were a year ago with things. So I don't know. I mean, you see, and listen, it's not just college basketball that's getting hit with this. The NFL is getting hit hard with this. College basketball is getting hit, or the NBA is getting hit hard with this. We'll see what ends up happening. I like that people are willing to be. I mean, sometimes in a pandemic, write things in pencil, not pen. You got to be willing to adjust these things and move on the fly as the situation changes. You can arrive at a different set of thoughts. So I like that. It was the right thing to do to adjust your handling and guidelines of how you were handling these COVID pauses. And so we'll see what ends up happening. But talking about Creighton here, if I think it's important to sometimes I want to reset where everything was at heading into the year. Like, Creighton was coming off its best 2-year stretch in program history. Big East champs in 2020. Then last year, they got their first ever trip to the Sweet 16. Big time 2-year run. But this was a full-fledged rebuild in terms of a roster. Completely rebuilding it. You lose your entire starting 5. Creighton only had 18% of its minutes returning, which was the 3rd fewest in the country. So there were a lot of unknowns heading into this season. So it's been interesting each game to kind of watch this team learn and grow and have ups and certainly have downs as well. For me, I would say overall, this team has probably exceeded my expectations and are further along than where I thought they would be at this point. But with all that said, am I ready to sit there and say that this team is poised to, you know, for a top 4 or top 5 finish in the Big East, and, you know, they're without question an NCAA tournament team? I'm not ready to say that yet. I'm not ready to say that, because on a oversimplified, super broad way of kind of framing it, this Creighton team could easily have losses to SIU Edwardsville, Southern Illinois, Kennesaw State, and hell, maybe even Arkansas Pine Bluff. They could have easily lost 3 or 4 of those games. Easily. So clearly they have shortcomings prominent enough for that to be the case. But at the same time, this is the same team that blasted BYU on a neutral floor in South Dakota. BYU is an NCAA tournament team. They're good. And most impressively, this is the same team that absolutely dominated Villanova at home and beat Jay Wright's team by 20. They beat Villanova by 20. So I think that pretty much sums it up in some ways. This team, when they are good and clicking, they are good enough to hang with and compete with darn near anyone in the country. But man, when this team is struggling, they can lose to just about anyone in the country. So I think it's good to start there. To kind of frame where things were at coming in and then where things are right now from a big, broad sense. Good enough to kick Nova's ass by 20, kick BYU's ass on a neutral floor. They're also shaky enough at times where they could have lost to some, Kennesaw State, Pine Bluff, SIU Edwardsville. Ugh. Trust me, they had to grind to beat those teams. Grind. Had to hit a shot at the buzzer to beat Southern Illinois. So when you think about the 3 losses for Creighton, so that one of their losses, again, they're 9-3 on the season, neutral floor to a Colorado State team who's picked to win the Mountain West. That's not an awful loss. They're a pretty good team. And in that game, Creighton's defensive strategy was kind of to dare the Colorado State bigs to make some threes, and they did. And then the rest of the team got hot. In fact, Colorado State made 20 threes that game. 20. So that's one of their losses. The other loss, Creighton lost. They lost to arguably the biggest surprise team in all of college basketball in Iowa State. It was a game where Creighton had 15 first-half turnovers and just had a really, 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 really hard time handling the ball the whole game. They were disjointed and sped up and out of sorts all game. But despite of an atrocious night of ball handling, they still had a chance to win the game late. And again, Iowa State's pretty good. The Cyclones, as I'm recording this right now, they're 12-0. And they're kicking teams' ass right now. It's a real team. T.J. Altsberg has done a really good job with that group. So it's not necessarily an awful loss. And then the other loss was in similar fashion to the Iowa State game, but to just not near as good of a team. Talking about Arizona State. Arizona State isn't a very good team. They've had an average year. They have a lot of new pieces they're trying to break in, but they came into Omaha and pressured and disjointed Creighton into a bunch of turnovers and ball handling issues again, and they won the game. But just like that Iowa State game, Creighton had a chance to win the game late. They had a shot late that, if I'm not mistaken, would have won the game. It either would have went to overtime or would have won the game. I think it would have won the game, but couldn't get it done. So when you take all that in, there are a couple things that have stood out to me so far as I've observed and watched Creighton. Let's start with the good. Creighton, despite being young and inexperienced, have found ways to win a lot of games. That's a very positive thing and a good attribute to acquire for a group. We talked about that SU Edwards game, Pine Bluff, Kennesaw State, Southern Illinois, listening. The bottom line is, yeah, they could have lost those games, but they didn't. They found a way to win. That's good. That's good. Some more good things. The 3 Ryans. Ryan Nembhard, Ryan Kalkbrenner, Ryan Hawkins. Those 3 guys are their 3 best players and have been out-freaking standing. Truly outstanding. I'll get more in depth into those 3 guys in a minute, but the 3 Ryans, awesome. Defensively, they've been pretty consistent. I think a lot of that is due to Ryan Kalkbrenner and his rim protection. He's been big time in the paint, making things hard for people. A lot of their defense is kind of built around that. But this group has been better than I thought they would be defensively. They defended Villanova as good as any Creighton team's ever defended Villanova. So that's been good. The other thing they've been good with, scoring in the paint. This is kind of a different Creighton team, and I'll have some numbers on that in a second. But you could argue that their strength lies in the front line, not on their guards. They've been guard heavy for years. But oftentimes their best offense is playing through the post. And Creighton, as I'm taping this, ranks 6th nationally in 2-point field goal percentage at 58.6%. It's pretty efficient. Other thing that's been good is, hey, man, I think the coach has been pretty good. I got to tip my cap and salute Greg McDermott, the fact that he's done a great job so far with this team. Each night, it's kind of been a riddle to figure out the best lineup and who's kind of got it going and who doesn't and what lineup works and what doesn't. That's not easy to do. Ideally, as a coach, you go into every game and say, when it's crunch time, these are my 5. No doubt about it. Well, you never know. One day it's this group, one day it's that group, some day it's this guy, some games it's that guy. That's not easy. I think this team seems to be really bought in at this point. Like, nobody's got bad body language. Nobody seems to be pouty or fighting their role or fighting coaching. I think that's all good. And I think this coaching staff has done a good job in getting the team to play to a standard. And that's the mark of a good coach and a good program, where the names and the faces can change, but the standard and style doesn't. That's hard to do with so many new players. So I think the coaching staff's done a pretty good job with that. The concerns that I've seen so far. The first one is 3-point shooting. As I'm taping this, Creighton currently ranks 261st nationally in 3-point percentage. They've been typically a top 40, top 50, top 20 3-point percentage team over the years. They're 261st nationally in 3-point percentage. And they're 292nd nationally in percentage of points from the 3-point line. So where you're getting your points, free throws, 2s, or 3s, they're 292nd nationally in percentage of points from the 3-point line. Let me contrast that for you. So again, keep these two numbers in your head. 261st nationally in 3-point percentage, 292nd nationally in percentage of points from the 3-point line. Last year, Creighton was 62nd nationally in 3-point percentage, and 37% of their points came from the 3-point line. 2 years ago, the team that won the Big East title, they were 6th nationally in 3-point percentage, and they were 30th nationally in percentage of points from the 3-point line. 3 years ago, they're 29th nationally in 3-point percentage and 16th nationally in percentage of points from the 3-point line. I know I just threw a lot at you, but really let those numbers sink in. All you need to know is it's been a dramatic drop-off in 3-point percentage and percentage of points coming from the 3. They're not shooting it well or making as many 3s as they have been. This team isn't near as good or reliant on the 3 as years past. The 3 ball is still a big part of this offense and a big part of the program. Those numbers need to get better. Who knows if they will? I don't know. That was, oddly enough, I told you guys if you go back and check the tape in my preview podcast for the season, I said, oddly enough, I'm kind of concerned with how good a shooting team this is. And I know it's kind of weird to say because that's kind of the identity of this program. When you think of Creighton, you think of 3-point shooting. This team's not quite built like the teams in the past. They don't have Balak. They don't have Raggi. They don't have Doug. They don't have Zagorowski. They don't have Tyson Alexander. It's not built like that. It's kind of a different team. Now, Creighton's capable of making 3s, and they can be streaky, but this isn't the usual elite level let it fly Blue Jays we've seen from the 3-point line. Kind of a concern. Another concern's been ball handling. You can kind of chalk up 2 of their losses to they just couldn't handle the ball, Arizona State and Iowa State. This team's been turnover prone. They've had a hard time handling the ball cleanly. They're ranked 253rd nationally in turnover percentage. In all their losses, turnovers have bit the Jays, in particular 2 of them. This team isn't blessed with a bunch of great ball handlers outside of Ryan Nembhard. And Ryan Hawkins can handle the ball because he's kind of just older and smart and strong and doesn't get in bad situations. But ball handling and turnovers are a concern. They really need a secondary ball handler. another guy that can enter offense and handle the ball and create. And if you kind of look at, in particular, college basketball nowadays, a lot of teams play multiple point guards. You think about Gonzaga, Ayayi, Nembhard, Suggs last year. You think about Baylor with all their different ball handling guys, Mitchell and Flagler and those guys. Like they had so many different guys that could basically play the point guard spot. And Creighton's been the same way. Like when you put Marcus Zagorowski and Tyson Alexander on the floor at the same time, it's two dudes that can basically run the point. Even last year, you could throw Sharif Mitchell in there with Zagorowski, got multiple ball handling guys. Right now, Creighton really only has one dude that's kind of a pure playmaking, ball handling centric guy, which leads me to a name I just mentioned. Another concern is Sharif Mitchell's health. This is where Sharif Mitchell's health and injury and absence has impacted, I think, some of the turnovers and all this stuff. Like, he could be that secondary ball handler, but he's got that lingering groin issue. Sharif Mitchell's been in and out of the lineup. He's only played 6 games this season, and let's be honest, he didn't look great in those 6 games because he wasn't 100% healthy. He hasn't played in Creighton's last 3 games. Now, I will say in the last game against Villanova, Radi Andronikashvili filled in nicely, but he's not quite as good at, playmaking as Sharif Mitchell is. But they need Sharif Mitchell's ball handling, and he's the best on-ball defender on the team, so they need that as well. So Sharif Mitchell's health is a concern. Then one of the last concerns for me is, when Creighton gets in the half court in big spots against good teams, it can be hard to be totally reliant on the post and the post up. It can be tough to get it into Kalkbrenner and get it into Hawkins in big spots. It's just easier late in games when you just get the ball to a guard. It's easier to get the ball to a guard. It's easier to get the ball to Zagorowski. He brings it up than it is to throw the ball into somebody. Ideally, you want a creator with the rock who can shoot, they can get the rim, they can make a play for someone else. Damian Jefferson, Marcus Zagorowski, Tyson Alexander, Marcus Foster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Creighton right now doesn't really have that. Alex O'Connell's more of a, off a ball movement kind of creator. Kaluma's just a little turnover prone right now, and he's, not as good of a decision maker. Trey Alexander just isn't quite there. Nembhard he's getting there, but he's still, he's more of just like a playmaking point guard in the flow of your offense. What I worry about, maybe I'm not doing a good job explaining this. What I worry about is when you get into the heart of Big East play and Creighton got to play in the half court, because that's how a lot of these games become fist fights. When they get in the half court, post ups get more challenging. They just do. Can they find a guy they can go to create on the wing? Just go make a play. There you go. Huge question, in my opinion, and huge concern. That's kind of how I'm seeing Creighton right now, in terms of the good and in terms of the bad, or concerns. Not necessarily bad. Some of it's bad, but a lot of it's just concerns. Let's go through a few of the rotation guys, give you some thoughts on all those, on this dudes. Ryan Nembhard. He's been awesome. I mean, they need to rename the Big East Freshman of the Week award just the Ryan Nembhard Award. I mean, at this point, this guy's won it. I've lost count like 4 or 5 times so far, and we're only a couple of months into the season. He's awesome. I mean, he's a perfect fit for how Creighton wants to play. He's a stud. He can push it in transition. He can really break down the defense. He's shooting the ball better than I think at least I anticipated him to shoot. You always worry about that freshman wall, and the competition is about to increase for him now. But man, he's been a stud. He's a perfect fit for how Creighton wants to play. He's awesome. Ryan Kalkbrenner. I mean, damn, has he been good. God damn, has he been good. This guy, he's as good of a shot blocker as Creighton's had in my lifetime. Like of being around. I've been around the program, started as a red shirt in 2005. And, so, I mean, I've been around the program for a long time now, whether as a player, a coach, or now as a broadcaster. I don't think they've had a guy quite like Kalkbrenner. Patton was long and could alter shots, but not quite like Kalkbrenner can. And do it without fouling as well. I mean, he blocked 5 shots against Villanova. He had to have altered 5 or 6. I mean, he's making life tough for people when they get into the lane. And that's allowing Creighton's defense to perform at the level it's performing. And then offensively, he's scoring at a high rate, doing a pretty good job. Offensive rebound putbacks, posting up, making plays, scoring. I mean, he's been really, really good. Yeah, he needs to continue to get stronger and all those things. But man, I've been impressed with Kalkbrenner. Really impressed. Ryan Hawkins. You know, I remember, God, so I did a podcast with Bruce Rasmussen when he was retiring as a Creighton athletic director. I went to the basketball offices where Rass's office at the time was, and I sat down to do a podcast with Rass. And as I was walking in, I ran into a couple of the coaches, Steve Murfeld, a couple of those guys. And the first thing Coach Murfeld said to me, hey, how's your family? How's this? First thing he said to me was, hey, you're going to like Ryan Hawkins. He's really good. And that struck me. I was like, okay. Let me file that away. And then I remember the first practice I went to. I sit down, and Coach McDermott comes over and sits next to me. First thing he does is he points at Ryan Hawkins. He goes, I'd take that guy on my team for the rest of my career. I was like, okay. So for me, I was like, wow, all right, this dude's come in and he's made an impression. And boy, has he delivered on that impression. You never know how guys are, that the jump from Division II to Division I is a big one. Seamless for this guy. And he was a highly decorated, multiple national championship winning, player of the year winning player at the Division II level. And he has come in and been that and then some. And the thing that he's been really good at too, I mean, he's offensively scoring in the post, shooting threes, handling the ball, making decisions, scoring in the post. He plays with such good pace and knows where he wants to get to. But, he was a defensive player of the year at the Division II level. And he's pretty good on that end of the floor. He's just smart. He knows how to get in the right spots. He knows he's got good hands, when to go for steals, how to be active. He's better than I thought he was going to be on that end of the floor too. But then the thing that you hear about all the time from Coach McDermott is like he's been heaven sent from a leadership standpoint for all these young guys. He's that leader that can kind of correct guys without being combative, which is a hard thing to balance as a leader. But I could go on and on about Ryan Hawkins. He's been awesome. Alex O'Connell has started the season really well. I think he's playing the best basketball of his career because he's getting the first opportunity to play extended minutes in his career from when he was at Duke with Zion and those guys to obviously transferring to Creighton. Shooting the ball decent. He's the best back cutter on the team. He's awesome back cutter. Him and Nembhard have a great connection on backdoor cuts, lobs. Really good in that regard. He's a good rebounder from the guard position spot. He's probably the best vertical athlete on the team. Alex Connell's been really, really good. He's tried to take on that defensive stopper role, which is good to see. It's hard to complain about much you've seen from Alex O'Connell. I mean, he's got to tighten up his ball handling at times, but he's been pretty good. Arthur Kaluma, I think what was the stat they had on him? He was the highest ranked recruit in Greg McDermott's time at Nebraska or at Creighton. And you could see the talent there. He's still trying to put it all together. I mean, he's a guy that I think you're going to look up in February and he's going to start to be like, oh boy, look at this guy. Because it's still coming for him. He's been a little inconsistent shooting. He's been a little turnover prone in particular. He gets called for charges a lot. He gets a little out of control. But listen, Kaluma's done a good job rebounding. He's athletic. I love the way he attacks the rim. He's just a guy that's just getting his feet wet in college basketball, and I think he'll learn and progress. But I'm still buying stock on Arthur Kaluma, no doubt about it. Trey Alexander, coming off his best game, in the win against Villanova, really, really was good. A guy that I'd like to see start to shoot the ball a little better from beyond the arc, but seems to have a great attitude. Seems to be a team first guy, bought in. He's relatively good at getting into the lane at times to drive and finish. Trey's just got to keep on taking steps. But for the most part, he's off to the first 12 games of his college career. He's been solid. He's made some big plays and some big moments. But he's got to continue to get better every day. Radi Andronikashvili. You've seen more from him because of Sharif Mitchell's injury. And, doing radio, I've had the chance to interview Roddy a couple of times after games. And, man, this guy is just all in on what the coaches are telling him. And he's all in on trying to find other ways other than scoring to impact the game. He comes in. He won the SIU Edwardsville game with his energy and defense off the bench. Against Villanova, made a couple of big shots defensively. He was really good guarding the ball. He's come in and kind of bought into like, okay, I'm going to come in. I'm going to move the ball. I'm going to play hard. I'm going to play with some energy. And he's been pretty good. Of course, he's got to continue to tighten up his ball handling. I don't know how good of a three-point shooter he is, but he's just a redshirt freshman coming off a torn ACL. So pretty good start. Keyshawn Feazell has been solid off the bench as a backup big. He's one of those guys that gives a different look than Kalkbrenner because he's much more athletic. When he's out on the floor, you can hard hedge ball screens with him. You can even trap. You can switch because he's got the lateral quickness to do that. He's pretty springy as well. He can defend the rim a little bit. He's also got a little bit more skill with some of his backdoor passing and different things from that top of the key. Can't really complain with what we've seen from Keyshawn Feazell. And we talked a little bit about Sharif Mitchell because he's a guy that needs to he's got to get healthy because they need him. They need his secondary ball handling and playmaking, and they need his defensive ability as well. Best on-ball defender on the team. Those are kind of the main rotation guys. So, listen, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what the second half of the season looks like. I checked a few bracketology reports. A few of them have Creighton in the field after their win over Villanova. We'll see. I said at the start of the year, I thought if this team could host an NIT game, it'd be a good year for them. I'm not ready to completely move off of that. Just I think the Big East is pretty good. And I think this team's, I think it's like I said at the start. They're good enough to beat Villanova by 20. They're also the same team that could lose to SIU Edwardsville at home. Or, or against Iowa State and Arizona State look like they have a hard time entering offense because they're so pressured out and can't handle the ball. I mean, they're young. So we'll see. Again, I'm not ready to move off of like, hey, this team's going to the tournament. I don't know about that. I don't know. But what I do know is the three Ryans have been really good. And it's been entertaining every night to see this team kind of progress and take steps. So we'll see what ends up happening as now they turn their attention to Big East play and get into the heart of it. Because, again, arguably the best conference in the country, the Big East, it's going to be a grind for them night in and night out. There you go. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Give it a rating. Give it a review. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page as well. Get into the conversation. You can leave a comment. Certainly always some interesting conversations in the comment sections with that bad boy. But I appreciate all you guys downloading, supporting the podcast. We'll catch you next time on the Nick Bahe Podcast.
A Huda Media Production.